Hey friends, Melanie here. In today's video, I want to explore what I think is one of the top reasons why people aren't able to heal or aren't able to reach their goals, and that is the topic of self-trust. So we'll talk about what self-trust is, some of the things that may be breaking down your self-trust, and give you some tips on how to build that self-trust. So let's get started. So when we think about self-trust, I always like to think about how we often treat ourselves differently than how we treat others. A lot of us are it's pretty easy to think about people in our lives that we trust and people that we don't trust, right? And there's always certain behaviors or actions that show us that somebody is trustworthy, but often we're pretty bad at applying those to ourselves. So self-trust is really about that idea that I know myself, I can rely on myself, I have my best interests at heart, I am in integrity with myself, and it's kind of difficult for us to, like I said, apply how we maybe judge others as being trustworthy or not trustworthy and apply those things to ourselves. So I think the lack of self-trust is one of the major things that holds us back in life. I see this all the time, and definitely with myself, but definitely with clients that I've worked with. If they lack self-trust, it's very hard for them to make behavior change, to reach their goals, to find any amount of healing or success that they're looking for. And I think one of the most important things we do here on Earth School, right? One of our biggest pieces that we're here to learn is the relationship we have with ourselves. So self-trust to me has a few different parts, and I'll go through some of those parts and how they may be holding you back and how to work with them. So the first one is the inner critic. We all have the inner critic, right? They come under a variety of different names or labels, but we all have that voice, or maybe multiple versions of this voice that is always cutting us down, berating us, belittling us, downplaying our successes. All of these, pieces of perhaps the inner perfectionist is here as well. And this can really break down our self-trust, because this is part of us. When I think of like the inner critic or the inner perfectionist, I often use techniques from IFS, or internal family systems. This is a part of psychology that, essentially is talking about us as having multiple parts, right? That we always talk about this just normally, right? That one part of us that does this and one part of us that thinks that, or we have a part of us that's holding us back. So we all have different aspects of the self, right? That in my opinion kind of relate to different archetypes or things like that. And, the inner critic or the inner perfectionist, these are just parts of us that sometimes we allow to get a little bit too loud, but we also tend to have a difficult relationship with that inner critic, right? We've learned to be kind of upset about it or angry about it or resist the presence of the inner critic. And I think that the biggest key piece in working with that, because we're not ever going to get rid of our inner critic or inner perfectionist, all the parts of us, there are no bad parts. All parts of us have a role to play, a motivation behind what they do, a job that they're fulfilling, and a reason that they're there. But if we can allow, that's the key piece, allowing and accepting the presence of our inner critic, the presence of our inner perfectionist, these parts of ourselves, allowing them all to sit at the table together. Because again, they aren't going to go away. We need to make space for them to be here and stop resisting it so much. I think that's a really key piece in building self-trust, is to say, to develop a more positive or at least neutral relationship with our inner critic, and being able to listen to what they say, but not necessarily, absorb it all. Just, allowing them, again, a seat at the table acknowledging what they say, but not necessarily making major life decisions based on it. So befriending your inner critic, I think, is really, really important to building self-trust. And similar to that, because our inner critic often likes to break us down based on past choices, but this idea around regret is one of those, like, and I always see it as this really kind of dark, sticky, heavy energy. This regret, this energy that keeps us stuck to something that happened in the past. And we all know, right? We can't go back and change anything that we did. But starting to work with that idea of regret, relaxing and allowing, there's a theme here, right? That everything that we have done in the past is done. We can't go back and change it. But having that self-compassion, that forgiveness for ourselves, remembering that all of us are always doing the best that we can in any given moment, given the information we have at the time. Our entire body, our psychology, our brain is always trying to protect us. That is its number one job. So I guarantee if there's something that you did in the past that you regret, that was probably being done out of a place of protection, self-protection, trying to stay safe or gain a sense of safety in some way. And so working with not only forgiving yourself for anything and everything that you've done in the past, remembering that you were always just doing the best you could. You can apply this to other people as well, but this is about self-trust. That's a different video. And at least for me, I've really let go of the idea of mistakes. I don't believe there are such thing as mistakes. There are just choices that take us on different paths. And we need to start letting go of those judgments around, I should have done this, or I shouldn't have done that, or I regret doing this, or that was a mistake, or that was a waste of time. Like all of these phrases that we tend to use. So really shifting out of that idea of regret and mistakes and just acknowledging this is all part of my life's path. I was doing the best that I could at the time. And of course, acknowledging if there was any lessons learned, how that experience helped you grow and become who you are now. So working on releasing self-regret, again, it's kind of related to the inner critic. Those are two really key pieces in building self-trust. And the third one I think is just as important, but is one that is an ongoing thing now and into the future, and that is about integrity. So this is a really, maybe not easy, but easier thing to see in other people, right? When somebody does what they say they're going to do, that is integrity, is being in integrity. And we know, like, if there's people in our lives that are always making empty promises or never shows up when they say they're going to, or, never, not never, but like shows a pattern, right, of being unreliable. We know not to trust that person. And yet we are so good or used to breaking promises to ourselves, right? And I see this all the time, again, with myself and with clients. We're very good at just kind of brushing off the commitments that we make to ourselves. And so over time, that sends a message to ourselves that we are not worth keeping promises to. We are not worth committing to, that our goals are not as important as maybe somebody else's. And often we sacrifice our own, the things that we know we want to do to better ourselves, because of a variety of different things, right? We're really good at making excuses. So this is a harder one. And I always recommend starting small, right? This is part of like mindful goal setting, but allowing yourself a chance at success, right? Building these small goals, making these smaller commitments, building that momentum, showing yourself that you can be trusted. When you make a commitment to yourself, keep it. Show up and do what you say you're going to do. This is so, so, so important at building self-trust, right? Because it's kind of like the number one way that we allow other people to earn our trust. So why aren't we doing this for ourselves? Let's stop breaking promises to ourselves. Let's start showing up when we say we're going to, and really developing the relationship we have with ourselves. So that's, number 3. Again, number 1, working with that inner critic, right? Relationship with the inner critic. And 2 is letting go of the idea of regret or mistakes in life. And 3 is building integrity, showing up for yourself, keeping commitments and keeping promises to yourself. And again, start small so you can set yourself up for success, and build that trust from there. And kind of the last tip, and this is kind of working off of building integrity, is, keeping some kind of journal or tracking your success, tracking your progress. Because, we humans, our brains are really bad at remembering things, and our brains or perceptions easily shift and readjust over time. So we forget often how far we've come. So when we're on this journey of building self-trust, of really building this relationship that we have with ourselves, it's nice to jot a few things down, whether you have some kind of planner or success journal, or maybe you have like a gratitude journal every night, or every day that you keep. These are all opportunities to just write a few things down that you accomplished that day, or ways that you showed up for yourself. Different things that you've done for your self-care, or, how you've taken steps towards your goals. All of these things are really nice to just track so you can see over time, because your brain wants to see evidence, right? When we build trust, or we're looking for evidence that you are trustworthy, and writing things down or tracking can be really helpful. So that's all I'll say for now about building self-trust. I think this is a key piece, again, it's kind of part of that, self-sabotaging behaviors, but, the lack of self-trust, I think, is one of the biggest ways that we block ourselves from healing and achieving our goals. So I would love to hear your experiences about building self-trust, working with building integrity, showing up for yourself, keeping commitments to yourself, befriending your inner critic. All of these things, I would love to hear about them. So drop me a comment below. And stay tuned for the next video, guys. And until then, take care. Bye.